In 1925 New York, the streets are not just dangerous, they are a battlefield where only the smartest and fastest survive. Every corner hides betrayal, every shadow hides danger, and every mistake can cost a life. In this unforgiving world lives a young street thief named Christopher Dubois, played by Jean-Claude Van Damme. He is not a hero, not a soldier, and not a powerful man. He is just a survivor raised by the streets, learning from pain instead of guidance. Christopher has spent his entire life running from trouble. He steals to eat, hides to sleep, and trusts no one. The city has never given him a chance to grow, only reasons to run faster. But deep inside, he is different from the other criminals around him. He has instincts, intelligence, and a quiet hunger for something more than just survival. He doesn't know it yet, but his life is about to take a turn that will remove him completely from everything he understands. One night, a small robbery changes everything. Christopher attempts a risky theft that goes wrong, and suddenly he finds himself being chased not just by ordinary thugs, but also by dangerous forces tied to the criminal underworld. The streets he once controlled now feel like a maze designed to kill him. Every alley becomes a dead end, every face becomes a threat, and every second becomes a race against death. He realizes that staying in New York means certain capture, or worse. With no options left, Christopher runs toward the docks. The ocean represents escape, a chance to disappear from the life that is destroying him. In desperation, he sneaks onto a cargo ship, believing it might take him to safety. At that moment, he is not thinking about where the ship is going, only that it is leaving the city behind. But fate has a different plan waiting for him beyond the waves. Hours later, when the ship is far from land, Christopher is discovered by the crew. The illusion of freedom collapses instantly. The ship is not a passenger vessel, it is a smuggling operation controlled by violent men who do not tolerate stowaways. Christopher is beaten, captured, and thrown into captivity. His escape from New York has not led to freedom. Instead, it has led him into a floating prison in the middle of the ocean. Life on the ship is brutal. There are no rules except power. Weakness is punished without mercy, and survival depends on obedience or strength. Christopher is treated as nothing more than cargo, something to be used, controlled, and discarded. Days blur into suffering as he is forced into labor and surrounded by violence. He quickly realizes that the streets of New York were harsh, but this world is far worse. Here, there is no escape route, no familiar ground, and no chance of running away. During his captivity, Christopher meets other prisoners who have been broken by the same system. Each of them carries their own story of loss, some kidnapped, some betrayed, all trapped. These people no longer dream of freedom, they only hope to survive one more day. Christopher, however, refuses to accept this fate completely. Even in chains, his mind stays alert, constantly analyzing the environment, looking for any weakness, any opportunity. Among the chaos, a powerful and mysterious man appears, Lord Edgar Dobbs, played by Roger Moore. Unlike the rough crew members, Dobbs is calm, intelligent, and controlled. He does not act like a typical criminal or sailor. Instead, he watches everything carefully, especially Christopher. There is something about the young thief that catches his attention. Christopher notices this strange interest, but cannot understand what it means. Dobbs is not just observing him, he is evaluating him. Dobbs eventually approaches Christopher, speaking in a tone that feels both polite and dangerous at the same time. He does not treat him like a slave, but also not like an equal. Instead, he speaks as if Christopher is part of something much larger that has not yet been revealed. This meeting confuses Christopher because in a world built on force and fear, Dobbs represents something else entirely: control without visible violence. As the ship continues its journey across vast oceans, Christopher begins to feel that his life is being pulled in a direction he cannot resist. The prison he is in is not just physical, it feels like part of a bigger design. Dobbs's presence suggests that Christopher was never truly escaping his past. Instead, he may have been guided towards something unknown from the very beginning. The sea stretches endlessly in every direction, isolating Christopher from everything he once knew. The city of New York feels like a distant memory, almost like another life. Now he is trapped between survival and destiny, between being a victim and becoming something else entirely. And slowly, without realizing it, Christopher's journey from a street thief to something far greater has already begun. After days of brutal captivity on the ship, Christopher Dubois begins to understand a harsh truth: there is no rescue coming. The ocean around him is endless, and the crew treats every prisoner like disposable property. Food is limited, sleep is broken, and violence is constant. But instead of breaking completely, Christopher starts observing everything. He watches how the guards move, how the ship is structured, and how power is controlled through fear. His street instincts, once used for survival in New York, now become his only weapon in this floating prison. Every day on the ship feels the same: pain, exhaustion, and humiliation. Christopher is forced into hard labor alongside other captives, many of whom have already accepted defeat. Some have stopped speaking, some no longer resist, and some have completely lost hope. But Christopher refuses to become like them. Even though his body is weak, his mind stays active. He quietly begins planning escape routes, studying guard rotations, and analyzing weak points in the ship's structure. He knows escape is impossible for now, but understanding the system is the first step. During one of these exhausting days, Christopher once again notices Lord Edgar Dobbs watching him from a distance. Dobbs never behaves like the others. He does not shout, does not beat prisoners, and does not act like a typical villain. Instead, he observes everything with calm patience, like he is waiting for something to unfold. Christopher feels uneasy under his gaze because it feels less like curiosity and more like evaluation, almost as if Dobbs is testing him without speaking a single word. Soon after, Christopher is summoned to meet Dobbs privately. This moment changes everything. Instead of speaking to him as a prisoner, Dobbs addresses him like someone with potential. He speaks in a controlled, intelligent tone, hinting that Christopher is not an ordinary thief. He suggests that survival alone is not enough, that there are higher challenges in the world, challenges that require discipline, skill, and transformation. Christopher does not fully understand what Dobbs is planning, but he can sense that this man has influence far beyond the ship. Dobbs begins to reveal pieces of a larger plan, though never fully explaining his intentions. He mentions opportunities, hidden worlds, and competitions that exist outside normal society. Christopher listens carefully but remains suspicious. After everything he has been through, betrayal, slavery, and violence, trust is not something he gives easily. Still, something about Dobbs feels different, not safe but purposeful. It is as if Dobbs is guiding him toward a destination that has already been chosen. As days pass, Christopher's physical condition worsens due to constant labor. but mentally he becomes sharper. He adapts quickly, learning how to conserve energy and avoid unnecessary punishment. He also begins to notice small cracks in the ship's control system, moments where guards are distracted, routes that are less monitored, and areas where security is weaker. His survival mindset evolves into strategic thinking. He is no longer just reacting, he is planning. One night, tension on the ship escalates when a prisoner attempts to resist the crew. The situation turns violent and the punishment is severe. Christopher watches everything closely, realizing how quickly rebellion is crushed in this environment. The message is clear: strength alone is not enough. Without skill, control, and timing, resistance only leads to death. This moment leaves a deep impact on him. He understands that if he ever wants freedom again, he cannot rely on instinct alone. He will need training, discipline, and transformation. Later, Dobbs visits Christopher again, this time with a more direct approach. He tells him that the world is far bigger than the ship, and that survival here is only preparation for something greater. He speaks of hidden fighters, secret competitions, and ancient traditions where strength and honor decide fate. Christopher still does not trust him, but he is no longer completely dismissive. He has seen enough cruelty in the world to know that powerful men like Dobbs always have hidden agendas, but sometimes those agendas lead to opportunity. The ship continues its long journey across dangerous waters, moving farther away from Christopher's old life. New York is no longer just distant, it feels like another universe entirely. Everything familiar is gone. In its place is uncertainty, discipline, and a growing sense that his life is being shaped by forces he cannot control. And slowly, Christopher begins to realize something important. He is not just a prisoner on a ship. He might be a participant in a plan much bigger than anything he ever imagined. As the ship continues its endless journey across the ocean, Christopher Dubois slowly adapts to the harsh reality of captivity. What once felt unbearable is now becoming routine. The pain is still there, the hunger is still real, but his mind is no longer in shock. Instead, it has shifted into survival mode, calculating, observing, and quietly evolving with every passing day. Christopher starts noticing patterns in the crew's behavior. He understands when guards are most relaxed, when supervision is weakest, and how prisoners are moved from one section of the ship to another. These details may seem small, but for someone in his position, they are everything. He is no longer just reacting to violence, he is studying the system that controls it. Despite his intelligence and adaptability, Christopher remains physically exhausted. The labor is relentless and punishment is unpredictable. Some prisoners break under pressure, while others become numb to it. But Christopher refuses to surrender mentally. Even when his body feels weak, his instincts stay sharp. He remembers the streets of New York, where survival meant always being alert. That same instinct is now the only thing keeping him alive. During this time, Lord Edgar Dobbs continues to observe him from afar. Dobbs' presence becomes more frequent, and his interest in Christopher becomes more obvious. Unlike the other prisoners, Christopher is not ignored or discarded. Instead, he is being watched carefully, almost as if he is part of a hidden selection process. This creates confusion and suspicion in Christopher's mind. Why him? Why is this man so interested in a simple street thief? One day, Dobbs finally makes another direct approach. This time, his tone is more deliberate, more serious. He tells Christopher that strength alone does not define survival in the real world. According to him, true power comes from discipline, control, and understanding one's limits. Christopher listens silently, still unsure whether these words are guidance or manipulation. After everything he has experienced, trust feels dangerous, but ignoring Dobbs completely also feels risky. Dobbs begins to hint at something larger than the ship itself. He speaks of a hidden world where elite fighters are tested in extreme conditions, where only the strongest and most disciplined survive. He avoids giving full details, but his words suggest a journey that goes far beyond simple captivity or escape. Christopher is not being prepared for release. He is being prepared for something else entirely. At first, Christopher dismisses these ideas. To him, they sound like stories designed to control or confuse him. But as days pass, the consistency in Dobbs' behavior makes it harder to ignore. He is not acting like a typical captor. There is no random cruelty, no pointless punishment from him. Instead, everything feels structured, intentional, and connected to a bigger plan. Meanwhile, life on the ship grows even more brutal. Supplies become scarce, tempers rise, and violence among prisoners increases. The environment becomes unstable, and survival becomes even more difficult. Christopher witnesses fights breaking out between prisoners, not for freedom, but for basic survival advantages like food or rest. This environment teaches him another lesson. When people are pushed far enough, they stop thinking about escape and start thinking only about the next moment. One particular incident leaves a strong impact on him. A prisoner who once showed strength and resistance is completely broken after repeated punishment. His transformation from fighter to helpless victim shakes Christopher's understanding of resilience. He realizes that survival is not just about physical strength, it is about mental endurance over time. Even the strongest can fall if their mind gives up before their body. Dobbs uses these moments to reinforce his philosophy when speaking to Christopher again. He suggests that most people fail not because they are weak, but because they lack direction and discipline. He implies that Christopher has potential, but it is currently unrefined, like raw material waiting to be shaped. Christopher still resists accepting this idea, but deep inside, he cannot ignore the truth he is witnessing every day. As the ship sails further into unknown waters, Christopher begins to feel a shift in his identity. He is no longer just a thief from New York. He is no longer just a prisoner trying to survive. Something inside him is changing. Slowly, painfully, but permanently. The hardships are not just breaking him, they are reshaping him. And as Dobbs continues to guide him from the shadows, Christopher unknowingly moves closer to a destiny he never chose, but may no longer be able to avoid. As the journey continues deep into unknown waters, Christopher Dubois begins to notice that the ship is no longer just a place of imprisonment, it is slowly becoming a place of transformation. The brutal routine has not changed, but something in the atmosphere feels different. The crew's movements become more organized, the security becomes more selective, and Lord Edgar Dobbs appears more confident, as if the destination is finally approaching. Christopher is still a prisoner, but his mindset has evolved significantly. The fear that once controlled him is now being replaced by awareness. He no longer sees himself as helpless. Instead, he begins to understand the system he is trapped in. Every punishment, every order, every restriction seems to follow a pattern. It is not random cruelty, it feels like preparation. One day, Dobbs calls Christopher again for a private meeting. This time, the conversation is more direct than before. There is no vague philosophy or hidden hints. Dobbs tells him that their journey is reaching its destination and that Christopher will soon be taken somewhere far more important than the ship. He does not fully explain what awaits, but his tone suggests that everything Christopher has endured so far was only the beginning. Christopher listens carefully but remains cautious. He has learned not to trust words easily. However, Dobbs now speaks with certainty, not persuasion. It feels less like manipulation and more like confirmation of something already decided. Christopher senses that he no longer has control over the direction of his life. As days pass, the ship finally begins to slow. The ocean changes color, the air feels warmer, and distant land becomes visible on the horizon. For the first time in a long while, Christopher sees something other than endless water. The crew becomes more alert, preparing for arrival. Prisoners are restricted further, and movement becomes tightly controlled. It is clear that they are approaching a new world. When the ship finally docks, Christopher is forced to step onto land under heavy guard. The transition is overwhelming. After weeks of isolation at sea, the sounds, colors, and energy of a foreign place hit him instantly. This is not New York. This is not anything he knows. The culture, the language, and the environment are completely unfamiliar. He has entered a world where he has no identity, no status, and no understanding of the rules. Christopher is transported away from the harbor into a heavily guarded compound. The journey inland reveals a landscape that feels ancient and powerful. Temples, training grounds, and guarded paths suggest that this is not a simple city. It is a controlled environment built around discipline and secrecy. Christopher begins to realize that this place exists outside normal society, almost like a hidden world. Inside the compound, Christopher is separated from the other prisoners. This separation immediately raises suspicion in his mind. Why is he being treated differently? Why are others being held elsewhere while he is taken deeper inside? These questions begin to build tension in him, but there are no answers yet. Soon, Dobbs reappears, now fully in control of the situation. He explains that Christopher is no longer just a prisoner, he has been selected. According to Dobbs, Christopher possesses raw instincts that can be shaped into something greater. He reveals that this entire journey, from New York to the ship to this place, was not random. It was part of a selection process designed to find individuals capable of surviving extreme conditions. Christopher is stunned. He realizes that nothing he experienced was accidental. Every hardship, every struggle, every moment of survival was part of a larger design. But instead of feeling relieved, he feels manipulated. His anger begins to rise as he understands that his life has been controlled without his consent. Dobbs introduces him to the purpose of this place, an ancient martial arts tournament known as Ghang-gheng, held in a hidden location where elite fighters from around the world gather. The competition is not just about strength, it is about survival, discipline, and honor. Only the most capable fighters are allowed to participate, and the prize is something beyond value, a symbol of ultimate victory and prestige. Christopher does not fully accept what he is hearing. To him, it sounds like a trap disguised as opportunity. But Dobbs remains calm, explaining that refusal is not really an option anymore. Christopher is already inside the system, already marked as part of it. The only real choice left is how he responds. Training begins almost immediately. Christopher is introduced to strict discipline and controlled combat environments. Unlike the chaos of the streets or the brutality of the ship, this training is structured and intentional. He is forced to learn balance, focus, and precision. His natural instincts are no longer enough. He must refine them into skill. At first, he struggles. His street fighting style is raw and unpredictable, but it lacks control. He is corrected repeatedly, pushed to his limits, and forced to adapt. Every failure becomes a lesson, every mistake becomes a correction. Slowly, his body begins to adjust and his mind begins to accept structure. During this transformation, Christopher begins to understand something important. Survival is no longer about escaping danger, it is about mastering it. The world he has entered does not reward chaos, it rewards control. Dobbs watches his progress closely, never interfering directly, but always observing. His presence reminds Christopher that this transformation is not just personal, it is being monitored and evaluated. Christopher is still not free, but he is no longer powerless. He is becoming something new, shaped by forces he cannot fully understand. And as the training intensifies, Christopher stands at the edge of a new identity. No longer a street thief, no longer a prisoner, but something in between, preparing for a tournament that will decide what he becomes next. Christopher Dubois now finds himself trapped in a completely new phase of his journey. The ship, the ocean, and the brutal captivity are behind him, but freedom still feels far away. Instead, he is inside a controlled training environment where every action is watched, corrected, and measured. The world around him is no longer chaotic like the streets of New York or violent like the ship. It is structured, disciplined, and mentally demanding in a different way. At first, Christopher struggles to adapt. His instincts, which once kept him alive in street fights, now work against him. In this environment, raw aggression is not enough. Every movement requires balance, timing, and control. His trainers push him to unlearn his old habits. They correct his stance, his breathing, and even the way he reacts under pressure. It is frustrating for him because he is used to surviving through instinct, not instruction. Each training session feels like a test of patience. Christopher is repeatedly knocked down, corrected, and forced to restart. The environment does not allow anger or impulsive reactions. Instead, it demands discipline. Slowly, he begins to realize that his biggest weakness is not his lack of strength, but his lack of control. Every time he loses focus, he fails. Every time he slows down and listens, he improves. Meanwhile, Lord Edgar Dobbs continues to observe him from a distance. Dobbs never directly trains him, but his presence is constant. He watches Christopher's progress with quiet satisfaction, as if everything is unfolding exactly as planned. Christopher still does not fully trust him, but he can no longer deny that Dobbs understands this world better than anyone else. Whether Dobbs is a mentor or manipulator remains unclear, but his influence is undeniable. During one training session, Christopher faces another fighter who has already adapted to the system. Unlike Christopher, this fighter is calm, precise, and fully disciplined. The fight is not just physical, it is psychological. Christopher relies on speed and aggression, but his opponent counters every move with control and timing. For the first time, Christopher experiences a clear defeat in this environment. It is not just a loss of a fight, it is a realization that he is still behind. This defeat becomes a turning point. Instead of reacting with anger, Christopher begins to reflect. He starts analyzing his mistakes, understanding that power without control is useless here. He watches other fighters more carefully, learning how they conserve energy and strike with precision. Slowly, his mindset begins to shift from survival mode to learning mode. Days turn into weeks, and Christopher's progress becomes noticeable. His movements become more controlled, his reactions more efficient, and his awareness sharper. He is still not perfect, but he is evolving. The trainers begin to acknowledge his improvement, though they do not show any emotional approval. In this environment, progress is expected, not praised. Dobbs eventually approaches him again, this time speaking more openly about the purpose of everything happening. He explains that the tournament they are preparing for is not just a competition, it is a test of ultimate human capability. Fighters from different parts of the world will gather, each trained in different styles, each representing different philosophies of combat. According to Dobbs, only those who master both body and mind can survive it. Christopher listens carefully, but his skepticism remains. He still feels like a participant in someone else's plan rather than the owner of his own destiny. However, something inside him is changing. Even though he resists Dobbs's influence, he cannot ignore the transformation happening within himself. He is no longer reacting like a street thief or a captive prisoner. He is beginning to think like a fighter. One evening, Christopher reflects on everything he has endured, the streets of New York, the ship, the slavery, and now this controlled training world. He realizes that every stage of his life has stripped something away from him. First, his innocence, then his comfort, then his sense of freedom. But in return, something else has been built: discipline, awareness, and resilience. Still, uncertainty remains. He does not know what the tournament truly holds, and he does not fully understand Dobbs' intentions. Is this preparation for greatness or another form of control disguised as opportunity? The answer remains hidden, but Christopher no longer has the luxury of stopping. The path he is on is already moving forward. As training intensifies, the atmosphere grows more serious. Fighters are being prepared not just physically but mentally for what lies ahead. Every session feels like preparation for something far more dangerous than simple combat. Christopher senses that once the tournament begins, there will be no room for hesitation, fear, or mistakes. And in the middle of all this preparation, Christopher stands at a crossroads between who he was and who he is becoming. A street thief from New York is slowly fading away, replaced by something sharper, stronger, and more controlled. But the question still remains: when the real challenge begins, will this transformation be enough to survive what comes next? Christopher Dubois' transformation continues as the training environment becomes even more intense and demanding. What once felt like structured discipline is now pushing him closer to his physical and mental limits. Every day begins before sunrise and ends with exhaustion. The goal is no longer just improvement, it is complete reshaping of the body and mind. He is now more controlled than before, but the process is far from complete. The trainers focus heavily on precision, reaction speed, and emotional control. Christopher learns that hesitation is dangerous in combat, but so is blind aggression. Every movement must be intentional, every breath must be measured. Slowly, he starts understanding that fighting at this level is not about anger, it is about awareness. Despite his progress, Christopher still struggles with inner resistance. A part of him refuses to fully accept this new identity being built for him. He still remembers the streets of New York, where survival meant breaking rules, not following them. That mindset clashes with everything he is being taught here, but at the same time, he cannot deny the effectiveness of the training. He is becoming stronger, faster, and more disciplined than ever before. Lord Edgar Dobbs continues to observe quietly, rarely interfering but always present in the background. His calm confidence suggests that everything is going according to his expectations. Christopher, however, still does not fully understand Dobbs's role. He is not a trainer in the traditional sense, nor just a captor. He feels more like a strategist who has already mapped out Christopher's path long before he arrived. One day, Christopher is introduced to more advanced fighters who have been training longer than him. These fighters are calm, highly skilled, and emotionally detached during combat. Unlike street fights where emotions drive reactions, these fighters rely on discipline and timing. Christopher quickly realizes that he is still not on their level. Even though he has improved significantly, there is a gap in experience that cannot be ignored. During sparring sessions, Christopher faces repeated losses. Each defeat is controlled but humiliating in its own way. He begins to understand that raw strength alone is meaningless without refinement. The system is designed to break ego and rebuild it with discipline. Every failure is a lesson, and every lesson forces him to adjust his mindset. As time passes, Christopher starts to internalize this philosophy. He no longer reacts impulsively during training. Instead, he observes before acting. He learns to read his opponent's movement, to predict attacks, and to conserve energy. These small improvements gradually shift him from a reactive fighter to a strategic one. Dobbs eventually appears again during one of Christopher's training cycles. This time, his tone is slightly different, less cryptic, more direct. He reminds Christopher that everything he is doing is leading toward the tournament known as Ghang-gheng. Fighters from different nations and fighting traditions will gather in a hidden location, each believing they are the strongest. But only those who adapt quickly will survive the challenges ahead. Christopher still questions the purpose of it all. He asks himself whether this is truly about honor and strength or simply a controlled system designed by powerful people for unknown reasons. Dobbs never gives a clear answer, which only deepens Christopher's suspicion. But at the same time, he understands that walking away is no longer an option. He is already too deep into the system. As preparation continues, Christopher begins to notice a shift in his own identity. He is no longer the confused street thief who boarded a ship years ago. He is becoming something else entirely. His posture is different, his reactions are sharper, and his thinking is more disciplined. Even his silence carries confidence. The transformation is no longer external, it is internal. One of the final stages of training introduces psychological pressure. Fighters are placed in high stress combat simulations designed to test not only physical ability but mental stability. Christopher experiences moments where exhaustion and doubt try to take over. In these moments, he must choose between giving up or pushing forward. Each time he chooses to continue, slowly building mental endurance that matches his physical strength. However, despite all progress, uncertainty still remains. Christopher does not fully trust the system he is part of. He understands that he is being prepared for something extreme, but the true nature of the tournament is still partially hidden from him. This lack of clarity keeps him cautious, even as he improves. By the end of this stage, Christopher has changed significantly. He is no longer relying on instinct alone, nor is he completely dependent on instruction. He is beginning to form a balance between the two, instinct sharpened by discipline. This balance is exactly what the system demands. And as the final preparations begin, Christopher senses that the real challenge is approaching. Training is no longer preparation, it is the final shaping phase before something far more dangerous begins. Whatever awaits him in Ghang-gheng will not be like anything he has faced before. He is ready, but not fully certain if ready is enough. As the final stages of preparation begin, Christopher Dubois feels a noticeable shift in the atmosphere around him. The training environment, once strict and repetitive, now carries a sense of urgency. Fighters are no longer being shaped slowly, they are being finalized. Every session feels like it could be the last step before something irreversible begins. Christopher has changed a lot since arriving here. His movements are cleaner, his reactions faster, and his mindsets more controlled. But even with all this progress, he understands something important. He is still not at the top level. There are fighters around him who have spent years refining their skills, and they carry a calm confidence that he is still learning to develop. During sparring sessions, Christopher is now able to hold his ground longer than before. He no longer loses instantly, and in some exchanges, he even manages to counter effectively. But the difference between him and the elite fighters remains clear. They fight with precision that feels almost effortless, while Christopher still carries traces of instinct driven reaction. This gap reminds him that true mastery is not just about improvement, it is about complete transformation. Lord Edgar Dobbs continues to observe from a distance, rarely speaking but always evaluating. His presence has become almost symbolic for Christopher. Whenever Dobbs is near, it feels like a reminder that this entire journey was never random. Every stage, from New York streets to slavery on the ship to this training ground, was part of a structured path leading toward something much larger. One day, Christopher is called for a final evaluation session. Unlike previous training, this is not about learning or improvement, it is about assessment. He is placed in a controlled combat scenario against a highly skilled opponent who has already proven himself in multiple fights. The atmosphere is tense, and Christopher immediately understands that this is a different level of challenge. The fight begins with intensity. His opponent moves with calm confidence, using precise timing and minimal wasted energy. Christopher tries to rely on his improved technique, but quickly realizes that experience plays a major role here. Every attack he makes is carefully read and countered. Every opening he tries to create is shut down almost instantly. For the first time in a long while, Christopher feels the pressure of true imbalance, not because he is weak, but because his opponent is operating on a higher level of refinement. This fight is not about survival, it is about exposure. It reveals everything Christopher still lacks. However, instead of breaking him, this experience forces adaptation. Mid fight, Christopher begins adjusting his rhythm. He stops forcing attacks and starts observing more deeply. He reads micro movements, studies breathing patterns, and begins anticipating instead of reacting. Slowly, the fight becomes more balanced. He starts landing clean counters, not because he is stronger, but because he is learning faster in real time. The trainers watching this match begin to notice his shift. Christopher is no longer fighting like a street survivor or a newly trained student. He is starting to think like a true competitor. This evolution does not go unnoticed by Dobbs, whose expression remains calm but slightly more approving than before. Even though Christopher does not win the fight decisively, he survives it with significant improvement. More importantly, he demonstrates adaptability under pressure, a key requirement for what is coming next. In this world, raw victory is not the only measure of success. The ability to evolve during combat is just as valuable. After the session, Christopher reflects deeply on what just happened. For the first time, he understands that the tournament is not going to be about strength alone. It will be about who can adjust fastest, who can remain calm under pressure, and who can survive unpredictable conditions. This realization changes how he views everything he has learned so far. Later, Dobbs finally speaks to him in a more direct and serious tone. He confirms that the time for preparation is almost over. The journey to the tournament location is about to begin. Fighters from different regions will soon gather, each representing unique fighting styles and philosophies. According to Dobbs, this is not just a competition, it is a convergence of the world's most dangerous and disciplined fighters. Christopher listens carefully, but his trust in Dobbs is still not complete. Even though he understands the system better now, he cannot ignore the fact that he has been controlled since the beginning. Every stage of his life has been directed without his consent. Still, he also recognizes that without this path, he would never have reached this level of ability. As the final preparations conclude, Christopher begins to mentally prepare himself for what lies ahead. He knows that once the tournament begins, there will be no room for hesitation. Everything he has learned will be tested under real conditions. And unlike training, failure will not mean correction, it will mean elimination. The sense of isolation grows stronger as the departure approaches. Fighters are separated, organized, and prepared for transport. The atmosphere is no longer about training, it is about transition. Everyone understands that they are stepping into something far more dangerous than anything they have experienced so far. Christopher stands quietly, reflecting on the long journey that brought him here. From the streets of New York to the ship to slavery to training, every moment has shaped him into what he is now. He is no longer just surviving, he is preparing to compete at a level he once could not even imagine. And as the final moment before departure arrives, one truth becomes clear in his mind. Whatever happens next will decide not only his fate, but the final version of who he will become. The long awaited moment finally arrives as Christopher Dubois and the other selected fighters are prepared to leave the training grounds. The atmosphere has completely changed from strict preparation to controlled movement. Guards are more alert, instructions are sharper, and every fighter is treated like valuable cargo heading toward a final destination. There is no more training, no more correction, only transportation and anticipation. Christopher stands among the other fighters, each of them silent and focused in their own way. Some look confident, others remain cold and unreadable. A few seem completely detached from emotion, as if they have already accepted whatever outcome awaits them. Christopher, however, remains aware and observant. He is not afraid in the same way he once was, but he is cautious. He understands that the real challenge is no longer theory or practice, it is reality. Lord Edgar Dobbs appears one final time before departure. His presence carries the same calm authority as always. He does not give a long speech or emotional farewell. Instead, he delivers a final reminder. Everything they have experienced was only preparation. The real test is ahead, and only those who can adapt under extreme conditions will survive. His words are simple, but they carry weight. Christopher studies his face carefully, still unable to fully understand whether Dobbs is a mentor, manipulator, or something in between. The fighters are transported through a carefully controlled route. The journey is long and secretive, passing through unfamiliar landscapes that feel disconnected from the world Christopher once knew. The further they travel, the more the environment changes. Civilization fades, replaced by remote terrain, isolated structures, and signs of ancient influence. It becomes clear that this tournament is not held in any ordinary place. It exists far away from normal society. During the journey, Christopher reflects deeply on everything that has led him here. The streets of New York feel like a distant memory. The ship, the slavery, the training, all of it now feels like a single chain of events designed to reshape him. He begins to question whether he ever truly had a choice or if every step of his life was guided toward this moment. But instead of breaking under this thought, he becomes more focused. If this path was forced, then at least he must decide how to walk it. As they arrive at the destination, Christopher is taken through heavily guarded passageways into a hidden complex. The structure is unlike anything he has seen before. It feels ancient yet functional, designed specifically for controlled combat and observation. There are signs of fighters from different regions already present, each separated and monitored. The energy in the air is intense, filled with discipline, tension, and silent competition. Christopher is assigned a designated area with other fighters, but interaction is limited, communication is controlled, and movement is restricted. It is clear that this is not a traditional gathering. It is a structured system designed to isolate fighters mentally before the tournament begins. Every detail feels intentional, from the silence to the constant surveillance. As he observes the surroundings, Christopher notices fighters from different fighting backgrounds. Some carry traditional martial arts discipline, others look like battlefield survivors, and some seem trained in methods completely unfamiliar to him. The diversity of skill sets makes one thing clear. This tournament is not limited to one style or culture. It is a global convergence of combat expertise. This realization increases the pressure but also sharpens Christopher's focus. He understands that adaptation will be the key factor. His journey so far has already taught him this lesson repeatedly. Survival depends not on what you know, but how quickly you can adjust when everything changes. Later, Christopher is briefly separated for final processing. This stage includes verification, organization, and preparation for entry into the tournament structure. He is given minimal information about the rules, but one thing becomes clear: elimination is permanent. There are no second chances, no recovery phases, and no outside intervention. Once the tournament begins, every decision carries final consequences. As he returns to the group, Christopher notices subtle changes in the atmosphere among fighters. Some are meditating, others are mentally rehearsing, and a few are silently observing others, analyzing potential opponents. The psychological tension is as strong as the physical preparation. Everyone understands that they are about to enter a controlled environment where skill, discipline, and adaptability will determine survival. That night, Christopher remains awake longer than usual. He reflects on his identity once again. He is no longer the street thief running through New York alleys. He is no longer the prisoner on a ship or the raw student in training. He is now something in between, a fighter shaped by experience, pressure, and survival. But even now he does not feel fully complete. Something inside him still feels untested. He thinks about Dobbs one last time, the man who guided him through every stage without fully revealing his intentions. Christopher still does not know whether Dobbs is helping him or using him. But at this point, the answer almost feels irrelevant. What matters now is not why he is here, but what he will do when the real challenge begins. As the night passes, the environment grows even more silent, as if the world itself is waiting for the tournament to begin. Fighters are isolated in their thoughts, each preparing in their own way. The tension builds slowly but steadily, like a pressure that cannot be avoided. And in that silence, Christopher makes a decision within himself. Whatever happens next, he will not simply survive. He will adapt, compete, and fight with everything he has become, because everything before this moment was only preparation. And now the real test is about to begin. The silence before the tournament feels heavier than any training or punishment Christopher Dubois has ever experienced. The complex is now fully active, yet strangely quiet, as if the entire place is holding its breath. Fighters remain separated, each locked inside their own mental space, preparing for what they know will be a fight with no guarantees of survival. Christopher sits alone, observing the environment carefully. By now, observation has become second nature to him. He studies everything: the guards, the movement patterns, the other fighters' behavior, even the subtle tension in the air. Nothing is random anymore. Everything feels like part of a controlled system designed to push human limits. Around him, the other fighters continue their silent preparation. Some meditate deeply, focusing their minds inward. Others stretch, rehearse movements, or mentally replay possible combat scenarios. A few simply sit still, emotionless, as if they have already accepted whatever outcome awaits them. Christopher, however, remains alert. He is calm but not detached. He is focused but not blind to danger. Lord Edgar Dobbs remains present in the background of operations, though he does not directly interact with the fighters anymore. His role now feels more administrative, overseeing the final stages of preparation. Christopher notices him occasionally, standing at a distance with that same unreadable expression. Even now, after everything, Dobbs remains a mystery, neither fully ally nor fully enemy. As the tournament initiation process begins, fighters are gradually moved into designated holding zones. Security tightens significantly. The structure of the facility becomes clearer. This is not just a competition arena, but a fully organized system designed to control every stage of engagement. Fighters are not just participants, they are part of a carefully structured selection process. Christopher is briefly escorted for final briefing. The rules are explained in minimal terms, but the message is clear. The tournament is not about points or ranking, it is about elimination. Survival is the only measure of success. Every match could be your last. Every opponent could end your journey permanently. There is no room for hesitation or emotional decision making. This information does not surprise Christopher, but it reinforces what he already understood. This is not a sport. It is a controlled battle system designed to test endurance, skill, and mental strength under extreme pressure. The realization sharpens his focus further. He no longer sees this as something imposed on him. Instead, he begins to view it as the final stage of everything he has already survived. Later, Christopher is returned to the holding area where fighters await their turn. The energy in the room has changed. Earlier silence has turned into controlled tension. Some fighters begin to show small signs of anxiety. Others tighten their focus, mentally preparing for confrontation. A few exchange brief, guarded looks, already analyzing potential threats. Christopher notices how different everyone is. Despite sharing the same purpose, each fighter carries a different philosophy. Some rely on discipline and tradition, others on brute strength, and some on unpredictable aggression. This diversity makes the tournament even more dangerous. There is no single strategy that guarantees success. As he waits, Christopher reflects again on his journey. The memory of New York feels distant, almost unreal. The ship, the slavery, the training, all of it now feels like a transformation sequence that stripped away his old identity layer by layer. What remains is not the same person who started this journey. He has been reshaped by pressure, survival, and constant adaptation. But even with all this growth, one question still lingers in his mind. Was this transformation truly his choice, or was it designed for him from the beginning? The answer, however, no longer changes anything. Whether guided or forced, he is now here. And what matters most is what he does next. Before the tournament officially begins, Christopher gets a final moment of quiet reflection. There is no speech, no guidance, no interference, only silence. In that silence, he mentally prepares himself, not just for combat, but for unpredictability. He understands that no amount of training can fully prepare someone for what comes next. Adaptation will be the only true advantage. Elsewhere in the complex, Dobbs observes the final preparations with controlled satisfaction. His expression remains unreadable, but there is a sense of completion in his presence. Everything has reached the point he intended. Christopher and the other fighters are now ready for the final phase of the system Dobbs has helped shape. As the final signals are given, movement begins throughout the facility. Fighters are guided toward their entry points. The structure of the tournament is about to activate. The atmosphere shifts from preparation to execution. The long journey of shaping and selecting fighters is now transitioning into direct competition. Christopher stands with the others as they are moved forward. His mind is clear, his focus sharp. There is no fear in the way he once experienced it. Instead, there is awareness. He understands the stakes, the environment, and the unpredictability of what lies ahead. As he steps closer to the entry point, he takes one final mental note of everything he has become. The thief from New York is gone. The prisoner on the ship is gone. The uncertain student in training is gone. What remains is a fighter shaped by experience, discipline, and survival. And as the gates prepare to open, Christopher Dubois steps forward into the moment where everything will finally be tested. The tournament is about to begin. The final moment arrives as the gates open and the tournament officially begins. The tension that has been building for days finally breaks into reality. Fighters from different parts of the world are released into the arena system, each one stepping into the unknown with a different mindset, some confident, some cautious, and some already calculating survival routes. Christopher Dubois steps forward with controlled focus. There is no panic in him anymore, no confusion like before. Everything he has endured, the streets of New York, the brutal ship journey, the slavery, and the intense training, has led him to this single moment. Now all of it will be tested under real conditions where failure is permanent. The tournament environment is unlike anything Christopher has ever seen. It is structured like a series of controlled combat zones, each designed to test different aspects of fighting ability: strength, speed, adaptability, endurance, and mental control. Fighters are separated into matches and situations where unpredictability is constant. There is no fixed path, only survival through progression. Christopher's first encounters are intense. His opponent is skilled, fast, and highly disciplined. Unlike street fights where chaos often dominates, this fight is controlled and technical. Christopher quickly realizes that hesitation is dangerous. Every opening he leaves is exploited immediately. He is forced to rely on everything he has learned: timing, observation, and adaptation. At the beginning, he struggles to fully adjust to the pressure of real elimination combat. The stakes are no longer theoretical. Every mistake could end everything instantly. However, instead of breaking down, Christopher begins to adapt in real time. He stops forcing attacks and starts reacting more intelligently. He reads movements, anticipates strikes, and adjusts his rhythm mid-fight. Slowly, the transformation that began months ago starts to show its results. Christopher is no longer fighting like a street survivor or a beginner martial artist. He is now blending instinct with discipline. This combination gives him an edge. He begins to counter his opponent more effectively, turning defense into opportunity. As the fight progresses, Christopher gains control of the pace. He does not rely on brute force alone. Instead, he uses precision and timing. Eventually, he manages to secure a decisive advantage and defeats his opponent. It is not a flawless victory, but it is a survival victory, something far more important in this environment. After the match, Christopher does not celebrate. There is no time for emotion. Fighters are immediately moved forward into the next stages of the tournament system. The process is continuous, designed to push limits without pause. Fatigue builds, injuries accumulate, and mental pressure increases with each round. Throughout the tournament, Christopher continues facing increasingly difficult opponents. Each fight teaches him something new. Some opponents challenge his speed, others challenge his defense, and some challenge his patience and mental control. With every match, he becomes more refined, more efficient, and more aware of his own capabilities. But the tournament is not just physical, it is psychological. Christopher begins to understand that fear, hesitation, and emotional reaction are just as dangerous as physical weakness. Fighters who lose mental control are eliminated quickly. Those who remain calm under pressure advance further. During one of the later stages, Christopher encounters a fighter who pushes him to his absolute limit. The match is intense, with both fighters adapting constantly. It becomes a battle of intelligence rather than raw strength. Christopher is forced to dig deeper into his training and instincts, pushing beyond his previous limits. In this critical moment, everything he has learned comes together. The discipline from training, the survival instincts from the streets, and the adaptability developed through constant pressure all merge into one complete fighting style. Christopher finally stops thinking like someone who is reacting and starts acting like someone who is controlling the flow. He manages to defeat this opponent, securing his place deeper into the tournament progression. But even now, he understands that victory does not mean safety, it only means continuation. Meanwhile, Lord Edgar Dobbs continues observing from the control side of the system. His expression remains calm and unreadable, but there is a sense that everything has unfolded exactly as planned. Christopher's journey has reached the stage Dobbs envisioned from the beginning. Whether this was guidance, manipulation, or something in between is never fully revealed, but his influence over the entire process is undeniable. As the tournament moves toward its final stages, Christopher begins to see patterns not just in fighting, but in the structure itself. It is not random chaos, it is a designed system meant to break individuals down and rebuild only those who can adapt under extreme conditions. He realizes that survival here is not just about being strong, it is about evolving faster than everyone else. In the final moments of his journey through the tournament system, Christopher reflects silently on everything he has become. The thief who once ran through New York streets is gone. The captive who suffered on the ship is gone. The confused trainee struggling with discipline is gone. What remains is someone completely transformed, shaped by survival, pressure, and experience. He does not know what comes after the tournament, and he does not focus on it. His attention is fully in the present. Every step forward is another test, another challenge, another opportunity to either evolve or be eliminated. As the system continues and the final phases approach, Christopher stands ready, not as someone seeking escape, but as someone who has learned how to exist within chaos and control it. And with that final realization, his journey reaches its decisive point. The story of the quest, 1996, concludes with Christopher no longer as a victim of circumstance, but as a fighter forged by it, standing at the edge of ultimate competition, fully transformed by everything he has survived.